She stood in the hospital doorway, looking at my 3-day-old daughter in my arms, then down at my faded gray sweatpants, and asked, "So, 300,000 a month, just evaporated?" The room still smelled like disinfectant, and warm vinyl, and that sweet, heavy milk scent that only a newborn carries. My daughter Maya was curled against my chest, her tiny fist pressed to her cheek. A plastic bassinet sat by the window. A bill lay face down on the bedside table. I'd already checked it 3 times. My grandmother, Eleanor, didn't look at the bassinet. She looked at my worn-out hoodie, the stretched-out knees of my leggings, the cheap duffel bag on the chair, and the way I'd slid that envelope under a pamphlet. Then she repeated it, slower. "Was 300,000 a month not enough for you?" I just stared. My throat was sandpaper. I hadn't slept more than 90 minutes straight in 2 days. My body still felt like a raw nerve. I was too tired to pretend I understood. "Grandma," I whispered. "What are you even saying?" She stepped further inside. Her face went completely still. That was worse than yelling. With her stillness meant she was already building a legal strategy in her head. "I have wired $300,000 on the first business day of every month since your wedding," she said. "I assumed you were living frugally on purpose. I assumed you were being smart. I did not assume this." Her eyes swept over me again. I looked down at Maya, then back at her. "I never saw a single dollar," I said. There are moments when the floor doesn't collapse. It just tilts 1 degree, and suddenly nothing in the room sits level again. My grandmother didn't gasp. She didn't coo or cry. She just pulled out her phone and dialed. "Susan," she said, "get to St. Catherine's now. Bring everything you can pull in the next hour." Then she hung up. If you were holding your newborn and heard that number for the very first time, would you ask for proof, or would you just shatter right there? I didn't shatter. I sat there, one hand on my baby's back, listening to my own heartbeat, trying to do the math. $300,000 a month. We'd been married for 30 months. That was $9 million. $9 million, and I had spent the last 4 months cutting coupons, telling nurses I didn't need the private room, and doing overnight stock counts for a drugstore chain twice a week, while 8 months pregnant because my husband kept saying we were barely afloat. I met Derek at a charity gala in Westport. He had that specific kind of face that made rich old ladies call him a catch. He worked in private wealth consulting, meaning he wore expensive suits and talked about money like it was weather. Markets, cycles, exposure, liquidity. Everything sounded temporary when Derek said it. Even my own anxiety. My grandmother liked him. Eleanor Whitmore had built a fortune in commercial real estate. She wasn't flashy. She wore old cashmere and drove a 10-year-old SUV. She signed 6-figure checks like she was ordering tea. When Derek proposed, I thought I was getting a man who understood quiet stability. I was wrong. What I mistook for steadiness was actually just control, wearing a nice smile. The first move came disguised as convenience. "A joint household account," he said. "Easier for the mortgage, utilities, groceries, baby fund. One system, one dashboard." He was better at tracking the fees, he said. I believed him because he sounded like a man who already had the answers to problems I hadn't even seen yet. First, the notifications went to his phone. "Autopay setup," he said. Then the password changed. "Security protocol," he said. Large transfers had to go through his bank because his limits were higher. All of it dressed up as efficiency. Then came the slow squeeze. I'd ask to see the balance. He'd say, "Don't stress about timing." I'd ask why my card got declined at Target. He'd say, "Fraud alert. Use the backup." I'd ask, "Are we okay?" He'd kiss my forehead and say, "Cash flows differently when you're married. Stop thinking like a single person." That line haunted me for a year. Cash flows differently now. You bet it did. By month 6 of my pregnancy, I was shrinking my own life. Not because he told me to. He was too smart for that. He let me arrive at poverty on my own. Store-brand vitamins. No maternity pajamas. I stopped ordering appetizers. I told myself back pain was normal. Then came the night shift. A friend knew a manager who needed overnight inventory counters. Cold lights, concrete floors. Mindless scanning of blood pressure monitors at 2 in the morning. I told Derek it was a little side work until things smoothed out. He looked impressed. "That's what I love about you," he said. "You don't fall apart when things get tight." I was standing there, 8 months pregnant, counting prenatal vitamins at 2 a.m. while he maintained the appearance. That was his word, appearance. Client dinners, charity golf, strategic gifts, all of it too important to question. Then his mother, Patricia, started visiting more often. Patricia had a PhD in sounding sweet, while cutting your throat. She'd walk into my kitchen, and say, "Oh, it's so nice you're keeping things simple." Or pregnancy makes some women let go. But Derek isn't shallow. Packages started arriving for Derek daily. Shoes, watches, a leather weekend bag that cost more than I made in a month of night shifts. When I asked, he said a client gave it to him. Patricia showed up with a new gold bracelet. Lucky find at an estate sale. She laughed. When the life you think is a struggle turns out to be a stage play, do you confront him immediately, or do you stay quiet long enough to see how deep the rot goes? I stayed quiet. I told myself marriage had uneven seasons. I told myself one person carries the weight in one direction, the other carries it somewhere else. Derek carried the language. I carried the consequences. There was a Tuesday in my 8th month. I was standing in the grocery store, phone calculator open, putting back 2 items to afford a can of formula. A stranger bumped my cart. I smiled like nothing was wrong. That same night, Derek posted a photo from a Manhattan steakhouse with a wine bottle on the table that cost more than my car payment. I didn't fight when he got home. I just asked how the trip went. Productive, he said. At 36 weeks, my doctor said stop the night shifts. My blood pressure was climbing. I said okay. Then I picked up one more shift because the electric bill came and the number made me dizzy. That was the life I thought I was protecting. Then Maya came early. A stormy Thursday. 20 hours of labor. A daughter who arrived furious and perfect. I had never loved anything that fast. I also remember staring at the list of postpartum upgrades, private room, lactation consultant, overnight nurse and, quietly declining every single one. We just need to get through this quarter, I heard Derek say. Then my grandmother walked in and shattered the quarter, the year, the whole lie. 40 minutes later, Derek and Patricia arrived. I knew his footsteps, confident, measured. He was holding flowers. Patricia had a gift bag. They were smiling the smile of people who still think they own the room. Then Derek saw my grandmother. His smile didn't vanish, it just paused. That was worse. Patricia recovered first. Eleanor, what a surprise. My grandmother didn't look at her. She looked at Derek. Where is my granddaughter's money? Derek put the flowers on the windowsill. I'm sorry. I don't know what funds you mean. Don't insult me, my grandmother said. Her voice was ice at conversation volume. Every month since you married Naomi, $300,000 went into a household account. An account you control. An account Naomi has never been allowed to see. I'm asking you once, where is it? Derek finally looked at me. There was no guilt in his eyes. Just computation. He was building exit ramps. Things are more complicated than that, he said. Obligations. Reinvestment. It was all for the household. I was counting grocery money, I said. My voice was thin but it didn't break. I worked night shifts with swollen feet because I thought we were drowning. I turned down medical care I needed. I felt guilty every time I wanted a new shirt. And you're telling me it was all for us. Patricia stepped forward. Naomi, sweetheart, you just had a baby. Your hormones. My grandmother turned to her. If your name is on any of that money, she said, silence is your only smart move. Patricia froze. That's when I knew my grandmother already suspected more than just theft. She suspected partnership. My lawyer is on her way, my grandmother said. Naomi and the baby are coming with me tonight. Derek said, that's not necessary. My grandmother looked at him. Your opinion no longer has logistical value. I went home with her that night. Not to the house with the marble island and the staged pillows. To her old place in Greenwich, where the floors creaked, and it smelled like tea, and safety I didn't know I was starving for. Susan arrived at 8 a.m. the next morning. Navy suit. Sharp eyes. She washed her hands, looked at Maya, said she's beautiful, then sat down and said, start at the beginning. Don't leave anything out. So I did. The joint account. The missing notifications. The side job. The declined cards. Patricia's constant gloating. Susan only interrupted to ask about structure. Who suggested the account? Who controlled the login? When did your access stop? Then she opened a folder thick enough to stop a bullet. Monthly incoming from Whitmore Family Holdings, she said. 30 deposits. All on time. All into the joint account. I held my breath. I still wanted this to be a decimal error. Then she put down the second page. Within 48 hours of each deposit, the money was routed out. First to Derek's personal brokerage. Then to a Delaware LLC he controls. Mercer Strategic Advisors. He's the sole signer. A map of betrayal is an ugly thing. It has a rhythm. She turned another page. There's also a secondary benefit stream. Patricia was an authorized user on a premium card paid from the brokerage side. Hotels, spas, jewelry, a consulting retainer that appears to be fictional. She wasn't just standing near the theft, she was eating from it. That sentence broke something in me. Not because I loved Patricia. I didn't. But because I remembered every time she had looked me over, and found me lacking while wearing something I couldn't afford. They had me on an allowance inside my own money, I said. Yes, Susan said. Then she pulled out the final document. Read this, she said. It was a transcript from a cloud backup link to a smart speaker, in Patricia's kitchen. Legal, timestamped. I read it twice. Patricia said. She still thinks tight means temporary, Derek said. She trusts process, if I say it calmly. Patricia said. She'll ask you first, before she asks a bank. Derek said. That's why we keep her tired, not panicked, just tired. I stopped breathing. There are kinds of pain that come with heat. This was cold. Surgical. The kind that makes you sit very straight, because if you move even an inch, you might fly apart. They didn't just exploit my trust. They managed it. They budgeted it. They treated it like a renewable resource. If the people closest to you were cashing in on your trust, before they ever touched your money, would you expose them that second, or would you let the evidence pile up? I let it pile up. Susan filed that afternoon. Civil fraud, financial abuse, emergency asset freezes. And because Derek had signed an $11 million term sheet 2 weeks earlier, Susan also sent a brief factual note to everyone doing due diligence on him. My grandmother read the draft, and crossed out a sentence that used the word unfortunate. Nothing about this was unfortunate, she said. It was engineered. The calls started before dinner. Naomi, pick up, your grandmother doesn't understand these structures. Then the texts. I was building for us. You're jeopardizing Maya's future because you're emotional. Emotional. He spent 2 years engineering exactly that state, and now he wanted to use it as evidence against me. Within 3 days, the Capital Group paused their deal. Within 5, they demanded full disclosure. Within a week, Derek was calling from burner numbers. Then he made the fatal mistake. A week after the filing, he attended a finance dinner in Manhattan. He told people I had a severe postpartum episode, that my grandmother had manipulated me, that I had taken his daughter and spiraled into paranoia over basic financial planning. He picked the wrong room. Someone who had known my grandmother for 30 years was there. So was a hospital foundation board member. By morning, every word was back to Susan. She added defamation before lunch. That was the real collapse. The term sheet died. The invitations stopped. The ecosystem of dinners and handshakes evaporated. One associate left his firm. Then another. A family office withdrew. A lender went quiet. Reputation in that world isn't morality. It's risk management. And Derek had become risk. Patricia tried once. She showed up at my grandmother's gate in a cream coat, face arranged into sorrow. My grandmother didn't let her inside. She stood on the step while Patricia talked about family misunderstanding and preserving dignity. Then Patricia said, "We all want what's best for the baby." My grandmother said, "If that were true, you would have left her mother enough money to buy groceries." The conversation ended there. By the time Maya was 4 months old, the case was just deadlines and affidavits. By 6 months, Derek wasn't fighting for innocence. He was fighting for less exposure, less paper, less damage. He left me a voicemail at 11:42 one night. I made mistakes. I got lost trying to provide. Pressure changed me. I love you. I hope you'll see none of it came from malice. Even his apology had a structure. I saved the voicemail. Not for me, for Maya. Someday she might ask what kind of man her father was. If she does, I want her to hear him, in his own voice, shaping the truth into something that flatters him on the way out. The woman counting inventory at 2 a.m., while 8 months pregnant, wasn't foolish. She was being managed by people who had studied exactly how far they could push. I moved into a small white house, 3 streets from my grandmother's, when Maya was 7 months old. Narrow porch, stubborn front door, morning light that made cheap coffee feel like a ritual. I went back to work part-time for a medical nonprofit. I opened my own accounts. I check every number myself. The first time I bought a good coat without asking permission from the voice in my head, I cried in the parking lot. One Saturday, my grandmother came over early. Maya was on a blanket, kicking at a stuffed rabbit. We drank coffee and watched her yell at the ceiling fan. After a while, my grandmother said, I should have structured it differently. I knew what she meant. Direct transfers. Protected trusts. Hard walls. You thought you were giving me freedom, I said. She looked at her cup. What I gave the wrong man was access. Shame tells you that you should have known. Truth says someone built the dark carefully around you. She kept going. I trusted your marriage, because you did. Then I let that trust substitute for inspection. You paid for that. I'm sorry. My throat tightened. I didn't see it either, I said. She nodded. That's why it worked. We sat with that quietly. I don't think about Derek every day anymore. Healing didn't arrive as forgiveness. It arrived as reduced frequency. Then reduced intensity. Then one morning, I realized an entire week had passed without hearing his voice in my head when I opened a bill. My grandmother was wrong about one thing and right about another. She was wrong that money alone could protect me. She was right that one decisive call can save a life. That's what she did in that hospital room. She didn't give me vengeance first. She gave me interruption. She stopped the machine, while I still had enough of myself left to walk out. And when I think back to that doorway now, her looking at my old sweatshirt, my daughter's tiny sleeping face, the bill turned upside down on the table, I don't remember the humiliation first. I remember the moment the lie ended. That is lighter than people think. Was the revenge justified? Absolutely. Naomi didn't steal. She didn't break laws. She simply exposed the truth, and let the legal and professional consequences do their work. Derek and Patricia engineered a long-term financial prison using trust as the bars. Exposing them was self-defense. Rate the revenge 1 to 10. I give it a 9 out of 10. Deducting 1 point only because Derek didn't see criminal jail time. Though losing his reputation, his deal, and his entire professional network in that world is arguably a fate worse than prison for someone like him. What would you have done differently? Comment below. Would you have confronted him earlier, called the police, or waited like Naomi did, to build the perfect case? If you made it to the end, hit like for Naomi's grandmother. And subscribe to Karma Court Files, because the best revenge isn't loud, it's documented. I'll see you in the next case.